sometimes ham. I think they have.
German mustard, that would.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Burnsville City Council work session, and I will call the meeting to order. And our work sessions are informal.
Informal enough to have snacks at the table.
Yes, have snacks at the table. And we'll go directly to our agenda. But first, I need to let everyone know that the meeting is both virtual and in person. So everyone here, our guests and the council and staff are in the council chambers, and people can watch us on channel 16 or 859, or else they can join us at www.burnsvillemn.gov/meetings. If they wish to participate via Zoom, they can also go to https://zoom.us.join. Our meeting ID is 991-9607-7746. And all of this information is in our website. So welcome to everybody. So tonight, we have the pleasure of having Tony Schertler from the Dakota County Community Development Agency. He's the executive director. Welcome, Tony. It's good to see you.
Thank you,
and
Mayor.
You have some good information to share with us.
I hope so.
Yes. Yeah, and also present is our commissioner, Liz Workman. She represents us on the county board. So welcome, Commissioner.
The floor is mine. May I start? Or
Oh, please.
Okay.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Mayor Couts and council members. I've put together some slides here on housing. I'm going to start with, I start off with bearing gifts. Next week, Commissioner Workman, we will be approving at the CDA board $15,000 grant, planning grant that matches your grant for Heart of the City. And so I know you're updating that plan, and that'll be coming out of our RIG planning money. So I'm always trying to buy my audience's goodwill, so we bring money. Also, there's a parking lot over there that Melanie and I have been talking about that we'd like to deed to the city. We don't see us developing on
Oh, we
it.
would love that. Thank you
Yeah,
very
we are-
much, because
so-
it's highly used.
Land
it's
and
great.
money.
Yes.
So I sort of feel like Oklahoma. So we are, like to start off, so.
Thank you for bearing gifts.
Thank you very much.
That's a good analogy.
And of course, the Burnsville City Council and city and county were great partners, staff who work together all the time, and we are working with our community development. I sit with the administrators. We're always communicating, and we appreciate candid and goodwill exchange of ideas and opportunities that we can use together to grow our community. So what I have done is, as you know, and for the benefit of the folks who may be watching, the CDA acts as the housing agency for the county and for the cities in the county. We are walking through our strategic plan right now, and we have broken it into two parts: housing and economic development. Economic development we're going to talk about a little later as we come back to the board. What we're coming here today is really a housing, and our role in housing is the affordability. So that is income qualified and rent restricted. So we use financial tools in order to pass on a lower rent to certain people who have targeted incomes, and then those rents are controlled over the term of the financing. So if you think of it this way, if it was a private development, we are purchasing property rights, if you will, which is that rent reduction with these tools we use, and then we pass that benefit on to the tenant. What I'm going to do is run through where we are in our strategic plan, and we would like to know what Burnsville's future, what you're planning. I've been looking at your comprehensive plan, taking a look at some of the issues that are going on here, where we can partner in the future. The direction from my board is we have teed up, I'm going to go right into this slide. We have teed up with our board that we believe we have the financial capacity at the CDA to build another 1,000 units directly. So not what we're helping finance private and nonprofit, but what the CDA can build directly over the next 15 years. And so we believe should the board want to do that, we can proceed to do that. Part of this, we have two developments in Burnsville we'll touch on in a moment. In our workforce townhome, we have 2 seniors, but we also have a new product that I want to talk about a little bit. But obviously, This is subject to city. The cities control the land use. You control your growth destiny. You have to permit the activity that we would otherwise do. So we need ultimately your permission, or interest or non-interest, doesn't matter. We are trying to get a good sense of this, and our board direction is go talk to the cities, find out what they're feeling, find out where they are, and then we'll start to put together this plan. So we do believe we have the financial resources. As you know, we use partly levy, we use state resources, and we use federal CDBG resources. We have some existing sites. So we have the parking lot surplus because we're not going to develop on it, so we'd like to get it back into somebody else's hands. We're starting with you. But we also have a site in West St. Paul, second phase of Gateway. We have a site in Invergrove Heights we're talking about financing with this levy product. And then we have some sites in Farmington. But one of the key components we're coming up to, and there's going to be a lot of federal money, ARPA money, there's a lot of different resources, is our ability to use these tools to also reposition property. So if you have blighted property that we can pick up, if we put some housing on it, if it fits into our mission, or if the county mission with ELF dollars, other things, these are good things that we can bring community assets together to clean up contaminated sites or orphan sites, things like that. So that's part of this, but it's not four square in the middle of it. I'm here really to talk about the end product, which is the housing. So what I've done, and it was in your packets, I'm just going to hand it around one more time in case people want it. I left a couple for the audience. This is the housing continuum, and we have put this together because part of what we're doing at the CDA is we work with the county community services who are really working with the kind of hard-to-house safety net folks. And so this continuum is a way to sort of illustrate to people when we talk about affordable housing, it's a complicated, nuanced topic. But there are some housing developments that are really for people who are struggling. They need services. So they need not only, if they have chemical dependency issues, they need some on-site services to help them take care and get better and move on. And that's not what the CDA directly builds. The CDA helps finance that. We help other entities put that together. We put together the financing tools in conjunction with the county to make sure the services are there. But we only occasionally do it. We're mostly doing working poor or folks who are income challenged. But I think this is a good continuum that sort of tell you, generally, it's a watercolor, what are the population demographics of folks in this housing? Because the financial assistance is obviously higher for people who are struggling with needs. And I'll give you an example. It's a three-legged stool. The capital stack, the bricks and mortar to build units, is fairly robust. We have a lot of tools to be able to do that. The challenge is when you have to heat it, rent it, the rental income. You got to maintain and operate it. And that tends to be federal housing vouchers or rent assistance that helps people get the space they can. And then the third leg, if we're talking about high barriered folks, are services. So do we have people who need some social worker or some contracted services in there to help them? So that's a high level of public purpose and a high cost. And then you move on the continuum all the way to the right. The biggest federal housing program is mortgage interest deduction, which is not means tested. So that's way over here where you don't really have a lot of local activity. That's basically people who are getting benefit of mortgage interest deduction when they buy a house. But there's all this stuff that happens in between, and it's really important to have a conversation about which one of those are we talking about when we're working with our communities so that you know if you have to permit something, if there's something unique about it, or you have to adjust. So that's one handout. The next handout, and I'm going to hand this one out again too because there's a piece of it that is not in the slide. But Dakota County, I'm on the board of directors of Minnesota Housing Partnership, which is basically a combination of housing developers, housing finance entities, U.S. Bank, nonprofit, philanthropic organizations, and we just try and snapshot the problem. One of the things we're trying to do is become a data point where people can say, hey, what's going on in the population? What are the demographic challenges? What this is a 2021 Dakota County. So Burnsville is a subset of this. We don't have this drilled down yet to the cities, but one of the things that I would ask, if there's anything else you want to follow up on, we'll go see if we can get more facts. But this is basically showing that what we all know. This graphic, don't be confused, it's not 2020, it's 2000. And so incomes relative, inflation adjusted, have been dropping relative to housing costs. So what they're trying to show here is a gap has been developing between what people can afford based on their income not staying up and the housing costs going up. The thing I want to draw your attention to is sort of the demographic challenges here, which are these incomes and what they can afford to buy. What can somebody afford to buy if they have a job? What I really want to draw your attention to is the bottom of page 2, which is a snapshot of types of jobs out there. And leads into the product that we've been building. We've been talking to some employers and chambers of commerce, and they have been saying, Tony, the challenge now isn't, economic development to create jobs. The challenge now is to find employees to fill jobs. And so we would like a conversation about, can we get housing for employees that we're hiring proximate to where they work? And so this demographic that shows health personal aides make about $28,000 a year. Those two lines across there are sort of what they would have to make in order to have 30% of their income go to housing. So this is a target that's generally accepted as you're in a healthy financial position if you're paying 30% or less of your income for housing. If you're paying more than 30%, you're financially stressed, you're not being able to save up enough to move on or buy a house. So it's generally industry standard. It's not scientific because some people live small. I mean, some people do a lot of things in their life to try and reduce their housing costs, but generally speaking, that's what we're talking about. So that tends to be the target that this agency's mandate and statutory authority is intended to address. Now, I'm going to just run through quickly here what we've got on our target. So the CDA housing targeted populations. As you know, we have senior housing, which is levy and rents. What's paid for on that, it's one of the first in the country that this agency created. We use our property tax levy to pay debt service for 30 senior developments. Valley Ridge is an example of that, where we took an old shopping center that was owned by, I think, KA, and we bought it. It was blight. We redeveloped it. We built senior housing on part of it, assisted living, and then sold the balance to to private market housing, and then Quick Mart. Yeah, Quick Trip is in there too. So that was a case where we were able to help the city reposition some real estate, be able to use some of these resources to do affordable housing, and then sell the surplus to private market activity. So that's an example of where we use the CDA levy. The other target, and that's seniors, 62 and up. So we've went from 55 and up to 62 and up because the board wanted to throttle back a little bit on production of senior housing because the Dominiums of the world, other folks were building it. So we still had a waiting list. We raised our qualification age to 62 because we had such a long waiting list, and I think 55, you're not retired yet anyway, so we're sort of closing that aperture a little bit. The other housing that we do is obviously we have the public housing. We're that agency. We're the federal government's arm to run public housing. And then we have tax credit workforce housing. The graph here on the right is really the distribution of these units throughout the county. And then we have individuals, so what we've been hearing from the chambers, and Gateway Place is an example of this, where we changed the flavor of our common bond fund, which funds senior housing, to build workforce singles. That's what we were hearing our folks, that's what the board wanted us to pursue. So we stopped building senior housing. I told the board we have this powerful tool. Is there another thing we want to build? And we did workforce singles, and that's Gateway. And that's coming up in West St. Paul and will be open November. We have 54 units there, and we have 400 people on the waiting list. And so we're pretty excited about that. We'll invite you all to our ribbon cutting in November 9th. And then we have, I call them exotics or boutique projects. Every once in a while, because our agency has got the skill sets, we're asked to do something that's not really in our bailiwick, like homeless youth. So in Lincoln Place in Eagan is a homeless youth permanent housing supportive services. Again, it's not independent living, it's supportive services for youth. And then here is Burnsville. So this snapshot is, we've got 4 developments directly in Burnsville, so that we have the 2 senior housing, Eagle Ridge and Park Ridge, right at the edge of heart of the city. And then we have Heart of the City Workforce Townhome Project that was built in 2003. So that's the last, Valley Ridge was 2012, so that was really our last project. And then Parkside is our other townhome project. We also have public housing, 61 units. We are in the process of disposing of the scattered sites, and what we mean by that is we have found it's inefficient for public housing to be in scattered sites and they're rental. It coincides with an effort to try and build equity with new immigrant populations or low-income folks, get them into home ownership to try and build equity and wealth. So what we have chosen to do is to sell those units to Habitat for Humanity. They will come in and buy them. They're working with low-income families to try and create wealth, own those houses. And then we're taking the sale proceeds of those single-family homes and putting them into a fund to build new multifamily or townhome development that is more cost-effective to manage. So we're kind of recycling. We get three bonuses here. We get ownership with a wealth-building family. We get sale proceeds that we can build more product. They also do a voucher. So the person, when we sell those units, there's a PBV or project-based voucher that now has somebody else can be portable and rent in the private market with that voucher. So it's a triple play for us. We're excited about it, and Habitat's very excited about it. They've got a lot of corporate sponsorship who are excited about getting into those units without having to build and put in a family.
Don't I remember when you did the scattered public housing in Burnsville?
Right.
But I don't remember where they're located,
They are,
because they're scattered sites.
there's some that are townhomes and fourplexes. There's 64 single-family units in our 380 scattered sites. So there's
Because
64.
I
and-
remember we talked long and hard about scattering that public housing around the community rather than concentrating them.
Correct. That is, so there's two things going on there. One of them is the townhome, a fourplex or an eightplex in a community that's there. We call them scattered too, though they're not single unit
Yeah.
scattered, they're townhome scattered.
Yeah.
And then, yes, that the trade-off on disposing of the single-family scattered sites is that we are reducing that, their voucher. Now, they get a voucher so
I
they can
know.
rent, but yes, we are reducing the supply of those scats within different communities. That is a trade-off
Okay, yeah.
Are there
Dan.
64 in Burnsville or throughout the county?
throughout the county.
Yeah.
How
Throughout
many
the
do we
county.
have in Burnsville, do you know?
I think you have 11, but I'm not positive. I have to go
Yeah.
back and check that. We have 61 units total, but some of those are townhome and fourplexes, and I just didn't break it down into those. Oh, well, here we go. We have 9 that are in Section 18. So that's the number, 9.
9.
Yep.
Okay.
So 9 of those are going to go from rental
Ownership.
To hone,
to home ownership, Habitat home ownership.
Habitat.
Yep. And the reason we're selecting Habitat is that we don't have the infrastructure to guarantee the long-term affordability. If a family,
Yeah.
a lot of times families live in these houses for 10 years, they build the skill sets to own a house, mow a lawn, do everything else they do, and they build some wealth. And Habitat has a right of first refusal, so the family sells, Habitat goes, we're gonna continue the affordability of this, put another family in. And that's how that works. So they're not typically there for 30 years, but they learn those skills.
So would Habitat be carrying the mortgage on that then? Is
Yeah,
that how that
Habitat
works?
does all, that's why we're doing it, is the deal we've cut with HUD is we say, listen, we're gonna make sure there's affordable home ownership here, but Habitat's gonna do it, and they've done it in Colorado, they looked at it, they're comfortable with that model. And so they basically have the long-term cost of ensuring that, so that we don't have to staff that up.
So that they can assure that it will stay affordable.
Correct.
and we have that same partnership that was the city, CDA, and Habitat on Burnsville Parkway going west.
That's for new construction, right?
That was new construction.
Right, that's right. Now, and again, so we will bring, a lot of times, we'll bring the capital stack to those transactions, and then provide the financing if there's gap financing or
Yeah.
anything else in there. But then the ongoing continuation of that is
It was
Habitat. So we're
Habitat.
in and out. On the long-term assets that we owned, we're obviously in there for 20 years, 30 years.
But that was a great partnership because the Boulders is just to the south, and they didn't object
Right.
to the development. But there were so many of us who were engaged in making that work. Because if I remember correctly, there are townhouses and some were fourplex, so I think there were probably 12 in
Yeah,
that.
that sounds-
Do you remember that, Liz?
You and I,
Oh, we
pounded
worked.
some nails,
Yeah, we pound nails and put up siding and all kinds of,
and it was the residents across the street in Washburn, I think it
yeah,
was,
Washburn, yeah.
that objected.
Yes, they objected, but not the Boulders.
Right.
Well, and I do think the other thing that Habitat, as we all know, they have a great brand. That people like Habitat. They sell. And they have corporate sponsors. They have corporation CEOs,
Yeah.
retired CEOs on their board. And I think these projects, though they may be small in scale, are really important community building projects to allow CEOs and those barn raising events that
Yeah.
they have to come and hammer some nails and do some stuff together. And so even though it may not be industrial strength volume, they're nice little one-offs that people do. And they came to our board when we were doing the first sale. We did an RFP because we have to RFP these units, and Habitat won the award. And they're one of the CEOs from Apple Valley was there and appreciative that this is something we like. We like to be able to build wealth in Dakota County and for new immigrant communities and their target population.
Yeah. And that development still looks good.
Yeah, I think they do a pretty good job.
Well, I want to compliment you because the product in the heart of the city is right next door to where I live. And it looks good, and your landscaping folks always do a great job to make sure it's well-maintained,
Thank you, Mayor. And
it meets our codes.
yes, thank you. And I do
And I
think,
remember, Liz, you remember, we wanted you to meet our standards for materials, and
Right.
you did.
right. And I do think, and I think everybody's aware of it, the board's aware of it, the difference, but this is local public housing. This is public housing that's paid for with local resources. We use those federal tax credits, but in our senior housing and these townhome projects, we know that we are working with our communities in partnership. And so your site planning issues, your materials issues, we're probably going to be a little higher, but the community's choosing to pay for it. We're a little higher curb appeal. We'll spend a little bit more on materials. We've talked about this with the board and how we maintain these properties and make sure the trees are planted again. I think that's the quid pro quo, if you will. We promise to be good neighbors and have a quality product in the community, and we pay probably a little bit higher than a pure investment property that's all about the ROI. So we have, because we count on the continued support of our local partners to pay for that. So that's keenly important to us. We want to know if there's properties that are bad or if there's any trouble there. You know, we stay in touch with your chiefs of police. We talk about any problems we have. We try and keep all the radars up on what's going on with these properties. So those kind of compliments, I will pass them on to Anna Judge, my property manager, and she will appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, Vince.
Thank you. Tony, I want to just rewind a little bit. You said Dakota County is scrapping scattered housing and is now focusing on more concentrated.
It's,
Can you expand on that just a little bit more?
so what we're doing is they're scattered sites, the 65 single-family units that are scattered, they were acquired, actually. They weren't built by this agency. A lot of them were purchased. And they were public housing units. And the federal government has been underfunding public housing for 30 years. They haven't built a new unit of public housing in 30 years. So the locals we've been doing it, building our own. They underfund the capital maintenance of these units as well. And so what we realized is that, look, we're on a terminal path here with these. They're not, when we have to replace the roof and we have to do any major landscaping, we have to hope that the federal government has put enough capital money in there. In addition, our property managers are driving all over the place. So there's an inefficiency with servicing scattered single-family units. So from a purely economic point, we said, you know what, it would be better to own 12 units of 8 townhomes or multifamily, that I have one property manager who goes and maintains it all, than these scattered all over the county, Farmington to Burnsville to Egan to Mendota Heights. And so the bargain is, yes, there's a concentration, but I want to be careful that term can be loaded. There is an economic efficiency with taking those units, putting in a family that's still affordable for that family, taking sale proceeds of those buildings and now building something else. And we would build it like Heart of the Cities. That's what we want to build, more of that and less of the scats. Does that mean they're concentrated? They are now. Our senior housing and our townhomes are concentrated in that if I take 65 units and I divide by 6, I do 10.
Well, what people don't know, but I do, is that you own more square footage of housing in the heart of the city.
Right.
You have Eagle Ridge, Park Ridge, you have the
Townhomes.
row homes.
Yep.
So when you look at all of the product in the heart of the city, you own
And,
quite a bit of square footage.
and Mayor, and part of that was because you were.
But people don't know that, but
Right.
I do, because I know what's going on.
Right, and you were rebuilding an urban village.
Well, we were building an urban center.
Right. And so we were able to bring those affordable tools and sustain the cost of basically taking a suburban community and re-engineering it so it's a kind of a walkable urban village. And it was a
You
twofer.
look at it, you probably have two and a half blocks
Mm-hmm.
of the heart of the city.
Right, right. And those are terms, so those times, the tax credit works like this. You get, it's a partnership with US Bank. So US Bank is really the owner for the first 15 years, and we're a general partner, we're a minority partner. When US Bank exits, we acquire those units, and they drop into the CDA portfolio for another 15 years. At 15 years, we have the choice of either selling it to the market, raising the rents, or recharging it again and keeping it affordable for the future without the tax credits. But I take your point. We are taking scattered units, selling them, and then if we build, I come back to the board and I said, I got $3 million of sale proceeds from Habitat for Humanity. What do you want to do with it? It has to be affordable. So that's true. We would be then building something. We would not build scattered single-family units because it's not efficient. We would say build townhomes.
So just an observation on that, if the goal of this housing is to try to motivate and get these people into single-family housing at some point, I guess it just makes sense that putting them or placing these units within single-family residences kind of helps embrace that philosophy and motivate that end goal. And so taking it out of that category and putting it into more densely populated, I'm not saying is a bad thing, but it seems like it kind of contradicts itself a little bit.
Actually, and you raised a good point that I neglected to mention. So out of the 65 single-family units, 22 of our residents asked if they could buy them. And so we are converting, we're using the same unit. They have to be able to financially do it. They have to work with Habitat. But we are taking somebody who's been renting a unit, sometimes for 20 years, and we're offering them the opportunity to buy it through this program. So it fits that model of the continuum. So they couldn't otherwise buy a house, because one of the things we can do with these units is reduce the entry point and help Habitat with any gap financing from another source to get that family in there. So you're right, of the 65 families, 20 of them expressed interest, which is about 30% of the product. So it's not to satisfy that continuum. Other folks moving in and out, you're right. I mean, I think we have to be honest. We are removing a product type from our portfolio that will no longer be available. That's an absolutely true statement. That's the
I think
trade-off.
it's a good product type, because you get a sense of pride and, ownership or something to look forward to, that the potential to buy a single-family home is on the table, so. But again, it's not my decision to make. But.
No, but it's a fair criticism, and I accept that.
Yeah.
Just because we
Dan
don't
Kay.
do it doesn't mean that the, Habitat.
Yeah, it seems like the model's just switching to another provider, but it's still
Yeah.
continuing in the
Right.
same model.
Yeah.
With
Right.
the same model, right?
Yeah.
We're just, you're saying, we're not gonna do that anymore. They're now taking it over,
Yeah.
and we'll continue to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Looking for more
Yeah.
efficient ways to do it.
Right. And there is a recognition that I want to be sure that there are trade-offs, and I don't want to understate them. There are trade-offs. We are removing something from our portfolio,
To someone
but
else's
the affordable mission
portfolio.
is still occurring through ownership in somebody else. And so we do this a lot at our agency. Are we really the best person to do this, or is somebody else better to do it? And the ownership issue was one of those that we said, you know what, why don't we go see who's doing it? Habitat, we knew had done it in another place, and they can bring other philanthropic dollars. We said, why don't we give a lightning rod here and see if we can draw up some support? But you're right, there's a trade-off, and I don't want to understate that is the case.
Tony, can you refresh my memory? I think years ago, you presented here that on the workforce housing side.
Yep.
that about 23% of the people that go through workforce housing eventually end up being homeowners. So that sounds like the percentages are the same with the ones that want to buy those houses that you're talking about right now.
There are, that's a great point, and we've talked about this internally, because there's data practices issues involved with how much you can share stuff. But we actually have really good success stories of people who have gone on to buy a house. So a lot of times think of our workforce housing as really, a lot of times it's working mom with kids. She's either coming out of divorce, now she's going to college, she's saving up money. And we get thank you letters every once in a while. And with respect to confidentiality or not wanting, some people don't want to sunshine it. I think we've talked about this, and I think at the end of this, the dashboard that we produce, how many people are actually getting, we survey them when they leave. Why did you leave? I moved or whatever, but some of them, I bought a house. We should talk about those. We should tell them.
Yeah.
Some people leave, some of them terminated. Some people terminated, they haven't been able to get their feet under them. And so we don't want to overstate that, but it's survey data, so we don't always know to a granular level. But I think that's a very good point, and we would like to tell more good stories. So the next slide here, if I'm taking up too much time, then I'll cut me
Yeah.
off.
No, go,
I love
please.
housing, you can
Yeah.
talk all night on that.
It's a work session.
Yeah,
The next slide is Gateway Place. So this is the new product. So we've been doing senior, and we changed because we've heard, I need a place for my employees to go. Unfortunately, the slide I got in my hand has got bricks on it. It has bricks on it now. This is right up at Annapolis and Rockford. And the City of West St. Paul, we had helped them redevelop this site, take down some blight. And we've been sitting on this property. The board said, where are some places we can build it? We knew we have one in Inver Grove Heights, and we have one here. 54 units, as I said before. Studio, $700, one bedroom, $850. We have a waiting list of 289 people on the studio and 368 on the one bedroom. So that tells you, we know the way, and if you look at some of the rents in the urban core, they're charging, $3 a foot. So we know we can build I don't want to say cheap, but efficient building that's small, not a lot of common area, that is good place for people starting out. Now, there is a minimum income requirement on this building. So we have on Gateway, or maximum income, but there's also a minimum. I don't have the minimum in front of me. But for a studio, the most you can make is $44,000 a year. So think dental hygienist, think of folks who are out there working and I just want a place to live. It is meant for singles, but fair housing, we can't discriminate. So we expect there'll be some moms with maybe a toddler. And seniors, candidly, there'll be seniors in here too. So this is general occupancy with those income targets. We are going to see how this fills out. We know we have a demand. Commissioner Atkins is pushing us to build this site down in Concord, phase 2 of this, and then phase 3 is right next door, and I encourage you to go over and take a look at it. Walk around. We're kind of excited about it. We think we have demand. We'll see what the demographic mix is. So if we have some challenges there, those are things we'll have to face, but I think right now, since we have kind of this bandwidth of income and minimum income, we should be okay. So that leads a little bit to the other part of our housing plan is working with the high barrier population. So that's really where community services, it's kind of the Housing First initiative. So they are saying, listen, we have to build the safety net, but we got to get them housed. And so we have been working with the county community services. We've given some rent assistance out of our levy that helps families at Dakota Woodlands. So the family homeless shelter at Dakota Woodlands was filling up and people weren't moving out, because they had nowhere to go. So we put some rent assistance in their hand, and the whole purpose of that is to try and reduce shelter time. Instead of building more shelter, let's try and move downstream a little bit and get them into supportive housing. We then financed Cahill Place, which is Inver Grove Heights, 40 units for high barrier families, homeless families. So they're coming out of Dakota Woodlands, they're in permanent housing, $600,000 of county community services dollars to help them with services. We did the capital stack, and we also do rent assistance. So we've got some project-based vouchers in there because a lot of these folks have no income. And so we're coming up to year 1. We need to do some longitudinal studies on how people are doing. Are they coming out? The nice thing is they have rent assistance now. After a year, they can take with them and go rent in the private market. But that's something that we went in conjunction with the county, both feet in. And as you can imagine, a lot of negotiation with the city when you're talking about a tough population, talking to the police, making sure the neighbors are comfortable, a lot of things that can go on. So we work through all of those, try and make sure that we've got everything going. But And it's not us, it's Center Cities owns it. We did the financing, but we helped them through that process. And it's partly our experience with the cities that we rely on that. The other thing is we are working with 360s communities, so they've talked about they would like some maybe supportive housing as they move out of battered shelter into housing. So they're working with the church next to them in Egan. We've given them some money, some planning money. We believe maybe some ARPA money might be available for them. And we'll see if Jeff Mortensen and those guys have the capacity to put together a partnership to see if there's something there. And I told them, green light, you guys, it sounds like you got a great plan. Why don't you go see what you can put it together and let us know if you have any challenges. And then we've also got in Egan Nichols Point, which is housing improvement bonds from the state for senior vets. It's veterans preference seniors. And the reason it's there, partly, we had the land next to the outlet mall, and it's 2 stops from the VA. So it's really for vets. And we'll see how that works out. It's singles, it's built a little bit like our Gateway site, so efficiency, 1 bedroom, right up by the bridge. So we're literally across the transit bridge from that. Again, that's a little boutique-y for us. And these are the permanent supportive housing projects that we have financed and own. So Lincoln Place is the one at the top. That's the homeless youth. The reason we own it is the state bonding requires public ownership, so we're there. The other one is Harrelson House in Apple Valley, and the bottom one is the new Cahill Family Place, 40 units. So this is something I'm just trying to remind community services and everybody else that we don't just do independent living. We bring our resources to bear for folks who are challenged with other things. Now, this is just,
Ask
oh,
me a
go ahead.
question.
Kara?
So the models that you're showing us, those are to assist your housing first situations. How do people qualify for that, and how are they disqualified for that?
Great question. So we are not supportive, we don't have the skill sets of community services, social workers, or supportive services. So this is a case where these are either joint ventures where we're really the owner, like in Lincoln Place, and we do the property management, but the waiting list comes out of coordinated entry or works through Madeline and community services. So she's identifying, that group is identifying the vulnerable population and whether they in or out. They send them to us, we do criminal background checks. There's some other things that we do to make sure that we have people who can live communally and aren't at risk. And if we run into a problem, we sit down and talk about it. So we're not black and white on that. We're willing to give somebody a chance. But again, Lincoln Place, where we own it and we're doing the property management, we have a relationship that we have to maintain with the city. And so we have one eye on that as landlords. As landlords, we have a power situation in property management. On the other one, Center Cities is the nonprofit that runs that. So that's really, they do the property management and the waiting list. And same with Harrelson House. So we're removed, we helped on the capital stack, but we stepped back. Nichols Point, the senior vets, will be doing the property management. We're in there. So again, we're very sensitive about our brand, our reputation, and how we're there, because we know the trust of the community is vitally important to support our mission. And so we don't control the waiting list on some of these, but we do verify where we own them and have the property management. And then this is just an interesting graph that I've shown, and this doesn't show everything. So one of the things that we have to remember is Dakota County, Met Council says Dakota County is going to grow household growth over the next 10 years, 17,000. Over the next 20 years, 34,000. Burnsville is projected to grow 900 in the next 10, 800 to 10 after that. And these are projections. This is Met Council. So 1,700 units of new households, 1,700 new households that are going to need a place to live in Burnsville over the next 20 years. This graphic are the income qualified, rent controlled product that this agency has influenced over the last 20 years, 30 years. What's interesting about this line is what we were talking about earlier. That yellow line at the bottom, that's how much new public housing has been built over the last 30 years. Basically zero. That's not bad, because what the federal government started to do at the end of the Ford administration was convert from federal government owning property to vouchers. And they said, let the private market provide, voucher the rent, and let them get into the market. So the bottom gray, 847, are where we partnered with US Bank and built our townhomes. So that heart of the cities is in that mix. The blue are the dominiums of the world, the real estate equities are the private and nonprofit developers that are accessing bonds and all those financing tools that run through us to build their product. And the red is Common Bond, our senior housing, and it now has Gateway. So that's why it ticks up at the end. So that had all been exclusively senior housing, and we've adjusted it and added another product to our mix. So we do a little bit of the boutique, Lincoln Place, but we primarily do family townhomes, which is the 847, senior housing, and now Gateway, singles workforce, working singles.
Tony, did Common Bond purchase Chancellor Manor with your help?
Yes, it wasn't,
They-
Common
they-
Bond,
they
I
bought-
have that.
They bought it from the Bernardis, if I remember, the Bernard. And you
So-
and I went and made sure that they know, yeah,
That's a great segue, Mayor.
yeah.
To the next handout.
What a setup.
Tease it up.
Yeah,
So this is what we gave to the NASET Award, which is the National Economic Development Entity. That's a preservation project. So the city was struggling, challenged property owners with Chancellor Manor. This was before my time, so, but I understand it because we used to do a lot of this in St. Paul. We put $10 million of our cash into this building as a mortgage. So we went in big. We recruited a property owner that we knew would work, hopefully, well with the community, and they fixed up the property. And so we took, so that's something to keep in mind, because as we do this housing development, we are always gonna have preservation. There's gonna be things that are expiring or properties that are decrepit, and the pie of money doesn't get bigger. And so it's about prioritization. And so there will be, some of our cities, like Burnsville, will be built cities that have housing stock that's older, and they're gonna have a different lens on this issue than Farmington. And so we are trying to be flexible and aware of that and make sure that we have consensus on where we go. And if we need more money, I'll go ask my boss, she'll raise my levy.
It's that easy too, right?
Yeah.
But
You're debt-free over there.
and that's partly, candidly, that's partly why I'm here, is to listen to you, and so can come back to the board and say, here's our 10-year plan. Here's preliminarily how much money we need, so that we can start landing some goodwill and projects. But this is a great example of, we spent some money that didn't add units, but we fixed up a property, we made it more habitable, and we don't want to lose, there's going to be preservation projects, and we're going to have to sometimes say, you know what, maybe it's better to preserve something than to build new, because the dollars are competitive. So that's it, thank you for that
Yeah.
segue.
Yeah. Vince?
Can I just ask a quick question
Sure.
while you're on that topic, Tony? We don't have to go back to the slide, but on the earlier slide about targeted populations in other communities, Apple Valley, Burnsville, West St. Paul kind of had the lion's share of the public housing and others. Is the CDA engaging with communities like Egan, Farmington, Inver Grove to step up and welcome more of this type of housing in where they historically haven't?
Yes. So so part of our strategic plan, and the board directed me when I said, we can build 1,000. Commissioner Holberg, you, several said, go talk to the cities. So we sat down with Egan about a month ago. Lakeville, we've had a preliminary meeting. I'm going to West St. Paul. Farmington, I've got scheduled. Hastings, here, Apple Valley. So I am going out to have these workshop sessions. And again, we don't have to have answers tonight. I'm inviting questions, follow-up, dialogue, but I want to be able to go back to the board and said, we teed this up, and we have there will be communities that say, you know what? I think Lakeville we've been doing a lot of projects down there. They've got the pressures of fast growth in Lakeville, and they may be like, you know what? If there's somebody else who wants to do a project, we're fine. Go move down the road. That's fine by me too, because I just want to make sure we deploy the dollars in the time we have. And so places where there's community consensus, where everybody goes, yep, we want to do that, I move mountains, they go to the top of the list. So that is exactly why I'm going out now and finding out if those communities want more or less.
One thing we talk about a lot as a council is just our natural affordable housing stock and the concentration of it here. So does that roll into those conversations that you're having with other built-out communities?
It rolls into, whether it's overt in policy, it is in the background. So when I was in St. Paul for 15 years, we had a map, and we had age of housing stock. And then we also had what is rented and what is owned on the single family. How much is, so we had, I can still tell you, 67% of the units in St. Paul were affordable to people that made less than 60% of AMI. And I had that demographic to show that there was affordability that was naturally occurring at NOLA. It also had areas of concentrated poverty. So concerns about, do we have, what's going on here? What are the stress points of poverty? And I will tell you, there's split opinion on this. There's some people that say, well, if you build new product and put it in an area of concentrated poverty, you've removed some obsolete structure and you've built a new product that a family can afford to access. There are others who will say, but if you do that, then you're putting more hot lunch, you're putting more folks who need financial safety net into that demographic zone.
And to the school district.
Right. And so that is a real conversation that people have to be candid about. We have to be careful that we don't violate fair housing rules, but we are basically, I have enough demand where we're Switzerland about it. And so if communities are struggling with something, we are no interest in jamming it down their throat. We're not doing that. We have enough other communities that would say, hey, we'd like to help you, and let folks, give them the time to work it out. So I think we have to be honest and that there is that tension. And you're a built community. The other program we have is single-family rehab that we use CDBG. So your aging housing stock.
It's
You may have more
preserving
Right.
those aging housing stock. Because we're built out, preservation is important for us right now. But there are some opportunities in redeveloping some property. The thing is, Melanie and I have had some conversations, taking an inventory of all of our product mix from single family and to then measure, where we are on a continuum from, the age of the housing, the cost, and what does that mean? And then the effects on service. For me, it's always because you have one thing, there is going to be a direct implication to our service costs. But we have to do a good analysis of what it is that we have. So I really appreciate what you're bringing to us and that you're open and allowing us to go through our process, knowing, because you know us well enough, that we're built out.
Right.
We have small little pockets that we can build something on, but, we're doing that right now. But there is a preservation side and the redevelopment side.
And we respect that there's a debate every once in a while in Egan when we go in there on.
Yeah,
because
well, they have a lot of land, and so does Lakeville.
Right.
We're 27 square miles, we're done.
Well, and Egan's concern is, on some of the council members, is the fiscal impacts of converting CI to residential.
Yeah.
And so there's that, and our position is, that is a city decision. Your
That's right.
land use decision, that is your decision, and we only want to go where we can get a permit, and those resources can happen. So that is, again, it's respectful deferral, and there's always changes. We talk about blighted properties would be, it may not be zoned right, but if there's something that your community decides you want to take on, and if we can bring resources to help, so long as I can satisfy my money and do the flavor of the dollars and do what that dollar says, like affordable housing, then we line up. Sometimes it doesn't, so we don't, and we say, step back, no problem. I appreciate that level of
Yeah.
candor.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, Dan.
Tony,
Gee.
I can say, in the last few years in our city, we've been building a lot. You've noticed that, I'm sure. And what I've noticed, as we've been building, we've been creating almost a competition amongst our NOAAs. And we're seeing a whole lot of our apartment buildings are upgrading themselves because they now have competition to deal with.
New product.
New product in that. And I'm just kind of curious, if we start building some new affordable, which I hear our employers would like to see more workforce affordable type housing so they can have employees, I got a sense that some of these lower level buildings may be forced to upgrade themselves in order to attract that particular clientele. And that's just a statement I'm making.
But no, we observe, so because we have the benefit of several tools out there, one of them are vouchers. And so we know, and we do inspections on buildings that accept vouchers. And so we know the quality of the building that are accepting vouchers. We also know there's some landlords who don't accept vouchers, which is fine. But what we observe is increased quality supply creates market intervention. I mean, it does have an effect. Now, it may be unfair. There'll be some people that say, well, sure, I can use those powerful resources to do it. And we are very careful, we talk about this at the board too, not to cannibalize the private market, which is why we don't go up to 120% of income. We keep our target lower so that we can then, those garden-style apartments or whatever is going on, encourage enhancements for people to live there. So I do think that's true, but it has to be balanced with not cannibalizing legitimate investors in housing.
No, I
And
agree.
we have that balancing.
I do have a question, and I don't know if you have this off your top of your head or not, or if we have this information. But in Burnsville, when we look at severe cost burden people, do we know how many homeowners are severe cost burdened? Do we know how many renters are severe cost burdened in the city?
So we have, on the last slide here,
Oh, I got ahead of you, sorry.
no, that's good. This is the close. So we do, and we provide it to the community development staff of all the cities. This is the rental demand by community, and it's basically, here it shows Burnsville, the pressure, if you will. So subsidize, this is the gap, this is the need that's out there. So Maxfield went out and they said, okay, here's what the population is. And they are saying that between 20 and 2030, there's 330 to 350 folks who are highly burdened, rent burdened, because their incomes are low. And so, but they are counting, there's some folks who are living small, there's some folks who are getting assistance. So I wouldn't say it's granularly accurate. I think there is somewhere in that range of folks who are rent burdened, severely rent burdened. And probably they may not have the capacity to increase their financial resources. There may be other issues that are limiting them from increasing their income. So we have, for example, in our Colleen Loney in West St. Paul, the average income there is $13,000 a year. They're on Social Security, they're mentally disabled, there are a lot of things going on. They're independently living, but they have some real challenges on the income side. So that's kind of what we're talking about on that deep subsidy. Affordable is working poor. So that's really kind of just folks who are burdened, and if we can get more supply out there, that helps them save and do other things. So that demographic is what's reflected in this general summary by city that's broken out.
And do we have anything as far as homeowners that may be in the same situation? And
What we track are foreclosures or the sheriff's sales. Those are down, actually, surprisingly, since COVID. They're dramatically down.
It's more than when you saw in 2009.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I can go back and check with Lisa Alston of what data we have on that, but I'm not sure how easy it is to gather and how detailed we have.
well, that brings me to another question now, is did the moratorium on foreclosures affect those numbers possibly? Is there a sense of where you think that might be at?
I think they're making, that's a good question. I think they're making the payments, though. I think what we're seeing is that people did a rational thing. They went and they said, I don't want to lose where I'm living. So they moved their resources, so they could be stressed, but they said, the last thing I want to do is lose my house in this environment because I can work here. So I think we saw really an adjustment of folks' priority of how they make payments on stuff. We haven't seen, and then there was so much, the other thing is it's very distorted right now because there's so much flooding of federal money in with unemployment, that is, the needles are going like this. It's hard to tell what's really affecting folks.
That's what concerns me when that flood does this.
Yeah, and we don't know, but I will tell you this, in our renters, we track how many renters have fallen behind, and there's rent help, the state's still struggling with getting that out the door, but we know how far people are behind, and we think they're gonna get there. We don't think we're gonna have any evictions by virtue of losing a job or anything. I think we're gonna be covered. Now, the other thing the moratorium affected, if there are other behavioral issues that have come up that are not income related, those types of are going to be easier. So that's, I think, and then the last thing I don't know if I handed it out. The last thing I wanted to give you was our dashboard. So we do quarterly, we send this to city managers. Sorry, Melanie, if you haven't shared it. But we have a county-wide dashboard, and this is something we're gonna update, but we really want folks to see what we're doing, how we're doing on this stuff. And this one is for Burnsville, so we do countywide, and then we break it out by city. And then this tells you, our CDA housing programs, our tenant housing, our rehab loans, single-family rehab loans. We're trying to scorecard this for you. We're gonna modify this. This isn't the way it's gonna be. But it's quarterly information to try and keep you up to date. And you can say, hey, what's going on this foreclosure problem, or what's going on single-family rehab? And I think you get some of this data from your staff as well, but we also provided. And again, as we build our 10-year plan here, what we really want to do is say, what's material to the policymakers? What do you want to know about? And keep us accountable and be transparent and show where it's going. So if you get any questions on anybody, you can say, you can look it up or you can call us. So I think that's it. I apologize. I feel like
It's very good information, and what I really appreciate, and thank you for all of this, is the collaborative nature of all of this, and that you're a resource that we can tap into. I'm also very grateful that you're open to some of the opportunities that might be available, and how we can work together on all of that as we look at redevelopment opportunities in the city.
cities are huge and important partners for us. And I think it's absolutely incumbent in this business that we avoid friction where we don't have to have friction.
Yeah.
And so time
It's true.
is not always the enemy. Sometimes it's let people, let it soak in. And we are always, we'll report back. We're gonna build 1,000 units. Do you want any? One of the things you're keeping an eye on is the shopping center. And so there's things going on there that, again, it may dovetail.
You got enough money?
Selling pieces.
We might.
Yeah, so,
Hurting it
yeah,
It's just there for lunch
Some of the
today.
yeah.
parts is worth
Dan
more than the
Keeley,
whole.
you have a question, a comment? Is that,
Tony, thanks for the presentation and the data. There's tons here to digest. I have a question related to a workforce. Looking through what the city offers based on our aging apartment complexes, we have a fairly substantial amount of apartments that are in the affordable range, depending on the qualifications, but even market rate that are priced low enough that they're achievable. And then we have all the new market rate product that is dramatically higher. And what I think is, I'm seeing, is that middle workforce 2 and 3 bedroom product is, all we have is some older product. And there's a lot of desire, obviously, for something that's not 40 years old, that's built with a little more modern design and amenities. And we had a project come before us in a work session that was looking for some housing TIF, I believe it was. And we're not in that business.
Right.
As a city, we decided we don't want to do those, right?
That's right.
And we said, that's the work of the CDA.
Right.
I'm curious if that developer connected with you, and if that project, if you remember, it's at County Road 5 where McAndrews ends on an old church property. They were producing a plan for a workforce housing project there. And had we been in the housing TIF business, probably would have moved forward.
Right.
But
Is that the one that was 1.2 million, Tiff, that they were looking for?
dollar amount, I can't remember. I just
was
remember
very
talking about
expensive.
the project itself.
Yeah.
I felt was a home run because it filled a need that I think we severely have. We don't have newer 2 or 3 bedroom, true working families, right?
Right.
So I'm just curious, is there any if you know anything about that particular project, and I can reach out to the person who came before us and sort of check in with them. It's been a while now. I did for a little while after that presentation, but secondly, pardon?
No.
No,
think
this is
no.
in the last year.
Yeah.
Last year that they came in for that church property?
It's been a couple years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, no more than that.
Because, yeah,
And
COVID time work.
is there
yeah.
is there any plans for the CDA looking at that? I know you're into the studio and one-bedroom boutique product right now, and that's a priority of the commission, and I understand that. Are 2 and 3 bedroom workforce housing units part of what you want to do?
So if we do the plan that we've floated, 600 units of multifamily common bond, which would be the senior or gateway, the singles and efficiencies. The townhome would be 400 units of that. That tends to be more opportunity-based because it's our 9% tax credit allocation. That's the heart of the cities. That's those townhomes or 2 or 3 bedroom. And we would love to build those. We would love to build those in Burnsville because we know there's a high demand there. It's the land issue. It's trying to get it,
Yeah.
fit that
It's
in.
the cost of the land.
Right, but that's the single, that tends to be the working mom who's working. There's a kind of a break even, it's about 40 units is what you typically, 35 to 40 units in those developments, so they're not huge. But on that, we would love to build them. Those are 1 bedrooms are $695, 2 bedrooms are $800 a month, 3 bedroom are $885. Average income for those folks is about 30,000, but again,
Yeah.
we're talking 60% AMI.
Right.
And again, because we know land is so precious, that's a case where I can bring those dollars to bear, and if somebody's, as long as we're not rewarding holdout, but if somebody has a higher price, we can cover that gap with some of these resources too. One of the things I've told the board is the ARPA money
Yeah.
is available. We're more of a stalking horse, because they're going through a bunch of priorities of how they want to use it. But we're sort of a catch basin for that, so if they need to spend the money, they may allow us to use some of those dollars to buy sites for affordable housing. So if you had a site, that would be eligible for our townhome project.
Well, that site's still for sale, so.
And I will take a look at it. Again, this is why I'm here. If you said, take a look at this, no commitment, just kick the tires on it, we'll do that and see if we can fit something on it.
Thank you. I think I really liked that site because it abuts some residential down 5, but it's right on the 42 corridor, right next to our CI industrial area, but also a block or two from where all the retail. So from a workforce standpoint, I thought the geographic positioning of it was phenomenally good for a workforce project.
And it's on a bus line.
And it's on a major,
Yeah.
there was a lot going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
We just, they needed that piece
Right.
to make it work
Yeah.
that we couldn't provide, but I think you can, and and maybe their attention is drawn to other things, but I hope that either they or you,
Would
the
love to.
CDA could.
US
put
Bank
that
would love to do a
there.
project. And I will share with you that my Chair Slavic, who represents Hastings and Farmington, he had told me just last week that the businesses, the industrial park, the folks that are around there said, we would like that product. They said, we're trying to recruit employees down here, and we think that your townhome project, not the surprisingly, they said, not the gateway one, but the townhome one is what they would like.
And the other thing is there's a Cub Food right across the street, so when grocery is a walk across the street, that's a
It's
great
huge.
location.
It's a home run.
Yeah, yeah,
And new Cub Foods.
yeah. I now remember the gentleman that came before us. Yeah, and but the cost of the land is exorbitant.
So is it to clean up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So and this is one of the things I've been warning the board, Dakota County has grown enormously over the
Yeah.
last 30 years, and we're built. And so you are starting to experience the same things we had in St. Paul a long time ago, which is getting something and recycling it.
Yep.
And land recycling is going to be a premium,
Yeah.
I think, unless you go down to Northfield.
Most of this lot, well, there's a small church, and then it's woods, and there's a bit of a goat hill. There's some topography issues but it still can be made.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, but obviously it can be, they had a plan on the site. I mean, they actually surveyed it, brought a plan forward and said, we need a housing TIF and we can move forward on this.
The more I can tell my commissioners, hey, I got a chunk. I will tell you, this is one of the things that I would like to do. I'm motivated right now for our agency to convert some of our resources to land. we have to go to ground. And then we have a way to go, and has to be in partnership with the cities.
Yeah.
If the city said, that's a site we really support you to go in, I will go back to the board and we will price it out. And I'm telling you, we can move mountains. We have the capacity to do a lot.
Yeah.
And we'd love to do it at your service.
Okay.
Need is here.
Spoken like a developer.
Yeah.
But,
Think of a half a
yeah,
dozen
yeah,
areas right now.
Right.
yeah. You know,
Gary Gill will
I'm always
shoot me.
very cautious about speaking about particular
Yes.
areas, simply because when they say, oh, government is going to be looking at that, deep pockets.
Right.
Price goes up. The price for that land right now is highly, it's very high. And they know they can hang on to it, see who's going to come.
And we are countercyclical. I think we have a strength of when markets go down, we still have the financial capacity to step in, so it is ideal to sit on counter cycles.
Yeah.
At the other benefit we have, too long as cities understand and work with each other, if I have a better price, pricing gets more honest if there's choices. And so if I can go and I got 3 sites that I'm gonna close on by the end of 2022,
Yeah.
are you in or out? So there is some benefit that strength allows on that as well.
Yeah. Well, Tony, thank you so much for
Thank you for
coming in,
having me.
and
Thank
thank you for the partnership and the collaboration, and thank you for the parking lot.
Yes.
The land of the parking lot.
As soon as we close,
We
just tell me.
truly appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner Workman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I knew once we built that
Yeah.
parking lot, you'd never take it back.
Yeah.
Thought about
Well, you
Yeah,
gotta hang on,
Councilmember
whatever
Keeley
happens to the
has,
next property eventually.
He has a last comment to make.
Oh,
I'm just curious, did your department take a look at a particular shopping center at the corner of Diffley and 13?
yep, we are, we're in the wings. I think we heard that there was somebody else on point from the city, and so we're willing to hang back.
I think we see that as, a mixed use with primarily residential, but does the CD ever do a mixed use project with commercial on main level?
Yeah, well, not us necessarily owning it. But again, I've got,
Remember Presbyterian and the KA site?
right, and I have, Carrie Gill, my development side, my property managers, I negotiate with them too, and they say, don't do that to me again. But those are things we can navigate. The benefit of some sites are that there's adjacency issues with other communities.
Yeah.
And we can step in the middle. I see what would be an exciting, hire a planning firm to contextually plan what happens on both sides, and because it's in 2 cities, I would pay for that. I go to the board and say, wait, we could help on that. I also think that the adjacent property owner is motivated seller. They've got some issues, but we can help them with those too. And then I think both properties benefit from one owner.
Yeah.
And a community
Yeah.
review. And
The school.
however we get there,
Yeah, 191
we
site.
should do that.
Agreed.
That is number one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
As Melanie is
yeah.
forcing a smile.
Yeah, sorry.
Forcing back a smile.
Well, thank you very much
you so
for having
much,
me.
Tony.
And
Thank you for coming
anytime,
in.
cup of coffee, I'm always available. I need your advice, please.
Thank you, Tony.
Yep,
Thank you, Commissioner Workman.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Okay. So the next item is pushed, and that is the Burnsville Utility System overview of drinking water and taste. So the next item is the Community Builders Award nomination. Michelle?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did get 13 nominations this year, and all of the nominations were in your background.
Yeah.
It's a bumper crop. Great, a lot of
I
great
think
stuff
they
out there.
all
We really got a
qualify,
great
and it-
turnout this year.
for me, I look at all of this and I look at the volunteer capital we have in this city is phenomenal. And what they give, and each and every one of them is given something different. So I ask you to support all of the nominees.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Is there
I think it's
anyone
great.
that you don't think fits what we're trying to do?
No, I think the Community Builder Award is a really great
This person's
tool for our community to recognize people who go out of their way and do wonderful things. And to that, your point about the volunteer equity in the city, it's always been very strong. And And this is an avenue to, you know, other than a thank you or an email, this is a little bit more of a formal recognition for their efforts. And sometimes these lists produce people that, you know, there's a few in here that, you know, they've been doing thankless work for years, right? And then someone discovered and finally said, oh, here's a mechanism to give them some
Recognize you
recognize
publicly.
what they've been
Yeah.
doing. Right.
Okay,
So, I
very
think it's
good.
great.
So there's consensus here that we recognize all of the candidates that have been presented.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, and then the next one, the next item is the Dakota Broadband Board update. Councilmember Schultz?
Taking over a presentation chair somewhere or?
Okay, so
Need a clicker.
we had the meeting, almost a month ago now at this point. And what we were discussing is really looking at the RFI, also having other cities were checking in with their councils to see where they were at on what they were still looking to do with Dakota County Broadband and what their goals were, that type of thing. So what we came out of on that meeting was we are, because we realized we do need to do a deeper discussion and we don't want to wait because we have been waiting. Things have been delayed. So we split the CNET and the INET apart from one another so that we could move forward more quickly on the INET and no longer delay on that. On the CNET, we're looking at a couple different things. And, you know, one other thing that came into play is we now have another new attorney who's assisting us. So, but great background in her areas and contractual backgrounds and that kind of stuff. So I think she's going to be helping us significantly in moving forward. So I'm pretty excited about that. On the INET, I mean, there was almost just unanimous support that this is something that's extremely valuable and to move forward. And we just need to get past that impasse and move forward on it. And so we're looking at that for the institutional network that we're looking at doing. On the CNET, we have a couple issues that we're looking to resolve on the board and have further discussions on, and to make sure that we can have time for those discussions. And it was several of our communities that are checking back in, and they have different needs, and they're at different points. And they also have different questions as well. And when we were discussing some of the items, some of the cities were taking away, well, I understood it this way, well, I understood it that way. And then that's when we realized, okay, we need to actually take a little bit more of a step back to make sure that we're using even the same language and hash that out first. Because some of what we may be discussing and thinking that we're disagreeing on might be terms, like not a shared understanding of terms. So I'm happy that we're like getting to that now so that we can get that hashed out. And we looked at, do we also need a third category? You know, we have the INET, which is your governmental bodies, right? Straight up us cities and the county. And then we have the CNET, which is, you know, you're more commercial, right? But is there that third category, or is it part of the INET? And that third category are other governmental and quasi-governmental partners. Is a school district INET, CNET, or are they something else? Are they a third category? And so that's what we're looking at
I thought it
is.
was I.
No, according to DBB, how it was going was, no, those are considered commercial. So those were CNET. See, and that's part of the, like, the confusion on some of this, right? And so that's what we're hashing out, is we're gonna look at, do we want to do this third category? What are we looking, and if we do, what are we looking to achieve with this third category? How can we partner? What are the parameters for it? So I think we made a lot of progress in
Well,
that last meeting. So
Yeah.
that went really well.
Well, because in the background, it says Dakota County stakeholders, including, so there's a residential portion. So it's not just the INET and the CNET. Then where does the residents fall in? The CNET?
So the residents fall into the CNET.
So, yeah, but when you look at this, K-12 and higher education and healthcare providers and employers and all of that are part of the stakeholder group.
Right. But we have, like we had the school district
Yeah.
in CNET. Do they really properly belong there? And that's what we were questioning. Do they properly belong there? And we made no decisions whatsoever on, do they belong there? What we're looking at is, do we need this third category? Or would the people that we would put in a third category, are they really INET? And so that's what we're gonna really examine on this to move forward. So we made the changes to make that split so we could push the RFI forward so that we're not stalled, so that we can keep forward progress going while we sort other areas of this out and also get our terms together. You know, and there was a little bit of confusion amongst cities as well, because even when we were coming back and doing the check-in, and if you remember, God, I think it was 6 months ago, we did ours. Probably 4. God, I hope it was 4 and not 6. But other cities were checking in and they were asking different questions. So then when they brought their information forward, they're like, I don't understand what is going on. I checked on these things and you guys are talking about this. Why are we? So it was very productive. We did really regroup and focus on, these are our areas of common understanding and agreement, and we are prepared to move forward. These are our areas that we still either have questions on, confusion, or we don't yet have agreement. And so now we know the path to go forward on that.
So have you all agreed on what all falls under the INET category?
So we're going forward with the INET as it stands.
No, that's what,
So we're going forward with the INET as it stands, which presently just means the cities proper.
Member cities.
Yeah, member
Just-
cities proper and the county. That may change to include like school districts and bus and that kind of stuff. Or they may get placed in a third category.
okay, so
But
then-
whether we do that or not, it won't fundamentally change what we need to do or the information needed to move forward with the INET. So we felt pretty confident and comfortable with that.
Would be good then to update your stakeholder group then under INET. Because if it's just
We're not ready
governmental-
to do that yet.
Under INET?
Right.
Okay.
So
Well, it sounds like you're
Is the
still-
RFI analysis of the network then, is that what you were talking about, or?
Yeah.
Now, that, I support.
Right?
that whole- We gotta do that.
Yes, so we have to move forward on that. And we did not want that held up any longer. So,
Glad you
yeah.
guys are taking your time to kind of really figure this out and not just
Yes.
automatically.
And to have
just start
shared
tossing
meaning.
it.
Exactly.
You don't have shared meaning on a
Right.
lot of things.
Right, and that's what we had to step back to establish. So I don't often say that a meeting was a good meeting, because most of the time they should have been a damn email, but that was a good meeting. That was a good meeting, you know? we got to, and we did so carefully and methodically, what do we understand? What do you mean when you say this, and what do I mean? Is it the same thing? So it was a very thoughtful discussion that we had.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
So the contract itself, are you looking to have it align with the JPA or possibly having to change the JPA because
We may have to change the
you
GPA,
change something from that? I mean, that we'll be in violation of the JPA.
which we may need to do.
Okay.
And that was also part of the discussion was, you know, if it means that we would need to change the GPA, are people willing to take a look at that? And everyone was like, yeah, we are, because we want this to work. You know, we want it done right.
Does it come down to where it may be just the JPA is all you need?
That I don't know yet. We're not that far.
You know, then I'm very pleased that we continue to ask the tough questions
Yeah.
here, and that we continue to say, no, we need more information, because right now, with everything that you're reporting on, there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding and no shared meaning on particular items. So you're working to get to shared meaning and then all of that.
Right.
And so the outcome of that may be an amendment to the joint powers agreement, perhaps. But, you know, you have a new attorney, maybe some of those things can be ironed out. But I am so pleased that we kept asking the tough questions and not jumping to making a decision about our engagement,
Yes.
but saying, wait a minute, we still don't understand. So if we didn't understand, I'm glad to understand that the board didn't understand
Yeah.
what they were talking about.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was good. It was a pretty open, frank discussion, which is exactly what you want.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, you know, and everyone, I can't speak for other people, but it appeared that people felt pretty good about where we were at by the end of that meeting. So, but I know we have our expert, so I would like to hear from him, because he's looking at it from a different point of view.
Yeah.
So,
Hi, Tom, welcome to the table. You can either sit there or you can sit where the
hot
camera's
seat.
right at you.
I'll move so everybody can see me a little.
Yeah,
bit.
so that, so you're looking, so the camera is, right, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and
Yeah,
council members.
welcome.
I would only add a few items to Councilmember Schultz's comments in that the RFP, RFI that she discussed essentially went forward and was released after that board meeting in August, and with the intent to remove the section focused on the CNET portion to, and then also redefine some additional needs in the RFP to look for additional partnership
So you have two things
opportunities.
out, the request for information and the request for proposal?
The RFI was converted into an RFP and then
Oh,
released as an
okay.
RFP.
yeah.
So then the RFP included a section in there that previously focused on CNET definition, CNET language, and that section was removed, and it was substituted with a focus on partnership opportunities, funding opportunities, and grant opportunities that the DBB could pursue and be recommended by the consultant. So that second track that Councilmember Schultz identified could be focused on and worked on separately. And the board then directed the Technical Advisory Committee, which I'm a member of and I sit on, to focus on defining what is the CNET and discuss the pieces. And we've had one meeting on that at this point, and out of that meeting, the Technical Advisory Committee, which is a larger group, decided to make a subcommittee so that the subcommittee could meet more frequently than the regular monthly meeting of the TAC. And so our goal is to have
You
as
don't have
many
enough
meetings as
meetings, that's right.
possible.
Can we
to
appoint more
come back.
people to this thing?
So more meetings. And I'm on that committee, that subcommittee, so that we can have more frequent meetings and come back to the board as soon as possible. The RFP was, as I mentioned, released in early August, and the actual due date for it was yesterday. So I'm not aware of the current status of what was received and how many were received, but the Technical Advisory Committee will meet again in to bring it back to the board in October for recommendations. And the board is not meeting in September, but they will be re-meeting in October.
Okay.
And on top of that, we also, at the same time, during the same period, the board adopted the 2022 budget for the DBB.
Okay.
And they also, they had one other milestone, and that was they adopted what are called OSP standards, which is outside plant standards. And all that means is the work that is performed on behalf of the membership by the contractors that are contracted by the DBB all meet a standard that is all done across the board the same way for all the members. And the board adopted that
That's
standard.
fair and equitable.
And it's a good thing because it really gets down to, it's like an engineering standard for
Yeah.
building out the fiber, specifically the fiber that we use for institutional network use right now.
But didn't you feel like it was, like, that was very productive and things were finally, like, could just move forward and,
It was a very frank discussion, very good meeting, and I think we've got a good path at this point.
Yeah.
Our goal is to try to keep it moving as fast as possible so that we can move it forward, and
But thoughtfully.
Yes.
And what I like is that when you hit an area, you all stepped back.
yeah.
Instead of saying, no, we'll just bulldoze ahead and do it. So I like the thoughtfulness of the process. So,
Yeah.
nice work, you guys.
I have a quick question for you,
Yeah.
Tom. I understand what you're saying and all this other, believe it or not. Do we have any gaps left in Burnsville?
On our fiber?
service provider gaps specifically.
Yeah.
Occasionally, we'll receive calls from residents or businesses about what they would consider inadequate service.
Yeah.
They may have some level of service.
No, I'm talking more our own loop that we've built out in Burnsville. We have a lot of fiber. Do we have any gaps left in any parts
Yeah.
of the city?
In terms
where
of
We have 27
We don't
miles.
have fiber now, but we will actually need it out there.
In terms of our institutional network needs in our area that we lack some fiber, would be in the northwest quadrant of Burnsville, as I would describe it, and in a little bit in the northeast
Landfill.
section. Towards the landfill,
Towards-
we have some water utility stations that are
that's right.
still on radio modems
Really?
that don't have fiber optic infrastructure to them. We
Is that
also
just
have
a
some-
little past our surface water plant?
This is more in the area, the frontage road along the Menards
Oh,
location
sure,
area.
Sure.
Near the landfill
Yeah.
area, on the south side of the 13, near Sioux Fisher Fields.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and in those general areas, we don't have any fiber infrastructure in that
That's
area.
about the only area left that we
That,
have.
and then the area
Our
up near
frontier, okay.
Egan border on Highway 13, that area too, we have a few water utility sites in that general area too.
So how much more fiber do we need to lay, Tom, to finish up the connecting of all of our facilities?
We've actually identified those locations and mapped it out through the ARPA project.
Oh, good.
And we've identified some cost estimates associated with that.
Excellent.
And we've also put together a prioritization. And the prioritization list really comes down to trying to take advantage of as many areas and locations that we can connect at one time. And what we've included in that prioritization list is those water utility sites I mentioned. Some park locations, so Sioux Fisher Fields, it would be one of them. And any other park sites, and then also school district buildings that we pass along those routes.
Yeah.
And so in both those corridors or those locations of Burnsville that I mentioned, we have each examples of each of those in those prioritizations. Partly because ARPA, it could be used for ARPA
Yeah.
funding, and partly because,
And a big amount of that, too, is in the infrastructure framework that was passed, a lot of broadband money.
part of it also coincides with other projects that are
Yeah.
going forward with Dakota County for transportation, especially
Yeah.
along the County Road 5 corridor
Yeah.
up to Highway 13 in that area that they manage all the traffic intersection lighting. So that might be an opportunity for a joint project with the county, and even a project where they may be able to use their own ARPA funding
Yeah.
to bring it forward.
Yeah.
So some of those items have been brought forward as options and possibilities. But beyond that, our institutional network serves us well, our current one. We have a very limited number of water utility sites left. We have some items that have been identified that are not necessarily need to have, but as long as we would be passing them through any kind of future build of our fiber infrastructure, it would make sense to connect those sites. And what I mean by that is, again, some park sites that we may
Yeah.
not have had in our short-term
Yeah.
plans, but now makes sense if we're passing by for other projects. And also, some of the water utility sites that are identified as PRV sites, which are pressure reducing areas that we monitor and control. So some of those typically are not controlled and managed by our,
Semstone would love that.
possibly.
They're always dealing with pressure. I hear from them about, oh, God, so, yeah.
Beyond that, our current fiber infrastructure serves us really well. It really
Yeah.
has for the last decade.
It has, and thank you, because, you know, and I have heard from some of our residents who are frustrated with their current service and want to know how they can plug into our fiber. And I says, well, we build the infrastructure, but we don't do content. So I said, we do have someone who's managing that part of our infrastructure. But I don't know, we have to get somebody to build content that would get to some of our residents.
Starlink, Elon Musk, just saying.
Yeah, yeah,
You're over Egan.
yeah,
No, our state is a test state.
You're talking about Wi-Fi?
yeah.
Yeah, there was,
That
lower
doesn't,
bit
that doesn't
Wi-Fi.
work for medical and financial and all those institutions at
Starlink
all.
does.
Starlink does. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I'm a little excited about it.
So it's really nice. I mean, I remember when we started down this road, what, 15 or more years ago? When you did your first white paper?
1996, I believe. we started.
Yeah, it was a long time. I remember
It's
that.
ahead of your
And,
mind.
and oh, and
You're a
You're a very
everybody,
patient man.
so and oh, that, and then we tried to do a link between Burnsville, was it Norway?
Netherlands.
Then,
So,
yeah, we're some in Europe, to really demonstrate that this was the future highway. It was a global future highway. And it was, yeah, that was good. Tom was bringing in innovation in technology back then,
I was just getting my first flip phone.
yeah.
I've just dated myself, too.
Yeah, well, I remember that first, do you still have a copy of your first white paper? I think,
I do, and it's probably in paper form, not necessarily electronic form any longer. So I'll have to
yeah,
dig it up somewhere.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Kara and Tom, thank you. I think you're doing some very thoughtful work. I'm glad for the diligence that's been put into this, and slowing down the process and making sure that we all have common knowledge and shared meaning on all of these things, so we're not confused.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
Just a question, if this new discussion in some different direction, or back to the original direction of the split IRU, has Egan expressed any interest to join DBB since this discussion started a couple years ago? I know they're not in, they did one thing, they shut that down. Is there any connection with them or inquiries by them to maybe consider joining?
Not directly with myself, but as I understand it, Egan's had some conversations with the executive director in terms of the current status of the DBB to keep up to date on what's going on. As I understand it, there may be some interest in looking at how the DBB may play a role in helping them manage their institutional infrastructure. Beyond that, I don't know anything else
Thank
that
you.
might be happening.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Karen, Tom?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you so much for the update. Well done. Okay, now we're going to reports.
You got mine.
You got, okay. Dan Keeley.
Don't you want to go to Mr. Gustafson? He always has nothing and passes, and then we
I
can
want
go.
to hear you first.
Well, it's only 7 o'clock.
I know.
The night is young.
What's your goal?
10 minutes. No, quick.
You can go 10. It's not 9:30, so.
Right. Our STA board meeting, which just happened yesterday, suburban transit providers, or members of the Suburban Transit Association have two prevailing concerns right now that all revolve around how the Met Council manages the STA members. One is we would like, and we are advocating for a different oversight body that would be less political and more, I think, fair and balanced in how they approach the suburban providers compared to the Met Council. And the second is the Met Council is our money source of federal funds, because think of it in terms of Burnsville as a direct recipient of ARPA, but cities that are smaller than 50,000 have to go through the state, which creates a lot of delay. And the Met Council is actually trying to take the money that should be going to the STA members and carve out some to keep for themselves for Metro Transit. They're trying to actually change the formula or use a different formula for how they're going to allocate the money and say, you know, you've got a lot of reserves, so you don't really need that much, so we're going to
can't
keep
do
some of
that.
yours.
I'm so shocked that they would do that.
And it's just amazing, the behavior of that group. Just highly disappointing in many ways. But anyway, so we, in our, one of our allocations from federal money, they were projecting that they were going to decide to use a different allocation model. And we asked our good friends at the legislature on the DFL and the Republican side of the aisle to carry a bill to ensure that they followed the federal guidelines and statute for allocating that money. And the very next day after that bill was introduced, to force them to do that, they called and said, oh, we'll be happy to do it that way. And so now there's another round of funding that is happening, and they're pulling the same stunts. So we are unfortunately having to deal with that again. So it's, I hate to bring constant challenging and disappointing news about how the suburban transit providers like MBTA, which is the second largest transit provider in the state of Minnesota behind Metro Transit, larger than Duluth. But it's a frustrating group, and the Suburban Transit Association is our lobbying organization, and we talk about legislative things, and of course we're always talking about the constant battle with our supposed partner and funding source. The other thing we touched on was talking about who our legislators of the year would be, to recognize those that are champions. Senator Pratt, Senator Osmet, Representative Masson, who's always been there for us, Representative Newman, and several others. We also, and I'm happy to share this publicly, the discussion was also around those that served on the Governor's Blue Ribbon Commission. And there were a couple of standouts in that Blue Ribbon Commission, 3 or 4, but one of them is sitting at this table now, Mayor Couts and Mayor Hovland of Edina. Both served the Suburban Transit Association members and the suburban transit providers very, very well in discussions, especially when those discussions got to be a little more interesting. Controversial. We were very, very happy that they went to bat for us and kept some things from happening that were being pushed forward. So thank you very much for that, and I see.
Well, that's important.
You know, we appreciate the work you did. On TAB is tomorrow. It's a planned 3-hour meeting, or 2.5, but it'll last 3. They are monster meetings, and it is because every meeting has a huge agenda. There's just no way to go faster. But a couple things, we get updates, as Councilmember Gustafson might remember from quite a while ago. The MPCA gives an update, and they're, of course, debating and discussing the California emissions adoption that the governor is pushing. The Metropolitan Airports Commission, they figure on extending the mask requirement until well into 2022. But on the good news front, also, they are going to keep their vaccination and testing stations open at the airport, which has been very convenient for a lot of travelers and people who just want to go there because one of them's on the parking deck. So you can drive in and get some testing done. Travelers still running about 60 to 70% of 2019's peak. I did ask if they, by chance, track that separate from leisure and business, and they don't. Fare, this is moving on to, oh, by the way, TAB took on last month's meeting was huge. There was a particular project. It's the 2022 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program, and we're taking a wholesale look at how the entire process is handled, specifically vetting projects, funding allocation, grading, valuation measurements, et cetera, public input, when we're taking public input, and we're moving that up so it's taken in consideration earlier on rather than near the end when it was almost too late. So making some improvements to how that process flow goes, and we spent a good, more than an hour, I think, on that particular project. And ultimately, in the end, one item, we as a suburban transit association, and that's who I represent on TAB, not just MBTA, but all the suburban transit association members, wanted to revisit a discussion about the allocation. I think I may have mentioned that in a previous update, but we decided to hold our powder until another year, let some time go by so we can bring some data. But the TAB last year voted and decided that out of a $32 million bucket that would be up for grabs for all of the transit providers, including Metro Transit, would have to, for a bid on or try and get through the regional solicitation process, they voted that $25 million would be set aside, leaving just $7 million for all of the projects. The $25 million is set aside for ABRT lines. Well, we don't, as suburban transit providers, necessarily have a lot of those. It's very much a Metro Transit type of project. So it basically guarantees that every year, $25 million is going to Metro Transit, and that leaves only $7 million for all of the other suburban transit providers and even Metro Transit to fund other projects. So we were hoping to have that discussion and maybe retool that back a little bit, maybe allow 12 million and 20 million split or something a little bit more. Prior to that decision being made, all 32 was being evaluated and considered for funding projects. But so we'll see how that goes. We're going to wait a year. MBTA board. A lot of the same things I just covered with STA. But I just wanted to touch on the fare. Of course, we all know the fare was down 40%. I think they had about 60% of the normal overall crowd. That was reflected in the busing. Buses were great. I went 3 trips on the bus, there and back, and of course it was fantastic service, great ride, and being able to do tickets through the app this year and not have $5 cash on hand or whatever. In this case, it went to 6 cash, or buy it in advance on the app. And you could buy it literally as you were standing in line for the bus to come up. You could complete the whole transaction and have it ready. So pretty slick system. Lots going on in growth in our local service. Express service still affected by downtown employers delaying calling back their employers or employees based on the Delta variant. So pretty much all of the providers report the same type of data. The one highlight MVTA Connect is now bookable through the app, and it has been for a couple months, but that continues to just grow and grow and grow. So the Uber model, as I refer to it, continues to be a big growth vehicle for the MVTA. And we are going through another round of partnerships where those of us serving on the partnership subcommittee are looking for employers who, and other entities, maybe public entities, who want to have a conversation about how we can improve transit service to their locations, like large employers like the hospital, et cetera. I would say Collins would be in that because they're a very large employer. And that's it. Thank you.
When does the Orange Line open?
Let's see, official, is it November? I think it's November is the kind of like the official ribbon cutting kickoff type of thing. I'll get an exact date. There was something sent out 2 or 3 weeks ago about that, and we got an update last month in I-35, and I cannot remember off the top of my head exactly what that date was, but it's coming soon.
Did they pop champagne in celebration of the completion of the 35 project?
Yeah, the 4.5-year long 35 W project from downtown to 62 there is a celebration for that coming soon, and yeah, that was great news.
Finally.
Probably far more greater news to every user who goes into downtown through 35W than even the folks involved in it from a policy standpoint.
So you have a 35W Solutions Alliance meeting when?
I had one last Thursday morning, and
Okay.
I was I am currently vice chair, and I was chairing that because Chair Workman had a conflict. But we are rebranding, not rebranding, we're updating the brand for 35 Solutions Alliance, and we're in the process of building a new website that's going to be much better than the current one that is,
Okay.
I don't even know how old it is. It's so
Yeah.
old.
Okay.
Yes, do you have a question about I-35?
No, it's something I will report on. Vince?
Fire muster last
Yeah,
week.
to,
Oh,
Dan,
I
Kay,
thought I'd save
and-
that stuff, but
yeah,
after,
Dan Kay and
after
Vince.
Vince is done, I'll report on the part
Yeah,
of the city race.
nice work on the fire muster. I know there's been some challenges, but I said to Melanie, we're going to be big next year.
We're going to be bigger. This was
Yeah,
our
bigger.
biggest that I'm aware of since this group has been tracking numbers. This was our most successful year going back to, I think, 2014. Prior to that, I don't, attending as a youth, I don't ever remember it being as busy as it was this weekend.
Saturday
So
was absolutely crazy.
It was
packed.
nuts.
Yeah,
It was like a state fair record attendance day where it was so crowded and lines were long, and it was, the energy was huge. It
All
was
three of
fantastic.
our, we got
well, I
things to.
worked that whole Saturday afternoon, and, in the past, we didn't have as much traffic in the afternoon. Had a lot of traffic. We ran out of stuff. Where before, we never ran out of stuff, the giveaways that we have and all of that.
Our food
So-
vendors ran out of food. Some of them that had never happened before. I mean, they were thrilled that it happened. But we're gonna go back to the drawing board and get to work for next year.
You had some long lines of those food trucks.
Yeah, not enough food trucks. That'll be
Yeah.
fixed next year. Not nearly enough.
We, those of us who are nonprofit and service, we thought maybe you can put us all in one tent area, because then you will have more for all of the different vendors. Because we were pushed in, but the thing is, I don't know whether that's a good thing. That was one of the things that one of the people suggested, maybe, those of
We'd like to
us.
get product vendors all together, so we have a really good,
Well,
I think of the Art and Outlet Jazz. When you think about that line of craft vendors,
Yeah.
it creates, that's the cluster
It has an
effect that draws
energy.
people
Great,
to
yeah.
it, right?
Yeah,
It's a lot of fun.
because when we look at that, the candle people and the other crafts people, and then we're thrown right in the middle of them, and then, but
our vendor person this was her first year.
Like the parade person was the first year.
Yep, we had some new bodies this year, and they learned a lot, and we're gonna make some adjustments, but overall, I think all of our people did a very good job.
Yeah, well, I think I've worked the yellow ribbon tent since we started. I've never been so busy, and we didn't, and ran out of stuff. We ran out of stuff.
That's awesome. Join us again next year.
Yeah.
Because we brought the stuff that we thought we would have enough for the fire muster, because we have the open house, the fire open house, so we had to. But all of the stuff that we had for the fire muster was gone.
Nancy was cracking her whip on me when I was setting up. So that's all I have.
Okay,
My next meeting for Experience Burnsville is in 2 weeks. It's our half-day work session, so we'll do the retreat then I'll have something to report on it. We haven't met most of the summer, so.
okay. Okay, Burnsville Community Foundation, we're doing a lot of work to enhance our visibility and the work that we do, and having more of a presence in all of the different festivals that we have in town. So the Burnsville Community Foundation will be present at all of this, was present at the Art and All That Jazz, present at Party on the Plaza, where we also have the International Festival as a partner. The International Festival will come back next year bigger, and and in person, so that's good. We're also right now in the midst of all of the lighting and snowflake fundraising. It's the snowflake year, because it's every 2 years, so that's going on, and and so we're almost there to with all the money for homage. So that fundraising continues to move forward. The other part has to do, well, I reported on our Savage Burnsville, because we only meet quarterly, so don't have anything to do there. With the issue of the opening of the 35W Bridge because of COVID, and I've not heard anything about that. So I had a conversation with Ames, because I'd like to have a ribbon cutting.
Yeah. Some
And
sort of
then I
ceremony,
have to
right?
talk to Tim over in Bloomington, so that we can do that.
Stop all the traffic to do that.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
We could do it on the trail. so
We could just
stop
pull it
traffic.
across real quick and let the
Yeah.
traffic
yeah.
Yeah.
And
do
so
the ribbon cutting.
Ames said that they could, yeah. Yeah, they could,
Run over it. A couple
they
of
could,
cruisers
they
will
could
make it.
help to facilitate that, because they're going to do a big opening of because of 35W completion. So I said to them, how come you're doing this and you didn't do the bridge?
Yeah, the bridge is one project. That was multiple bridges, overpasses,
Yeah.
intersections. I mean, that was a massive project
But-
from 62 to downtown.
I understand that.
But our bridge is big.
Our bridge is big,
a
and
cool
it's
bridge.
important.
It's
It's,
a pedestrian bridge now.
it's,
When are we getting
it's
our branded
important to us in Burnsville, and I want to highlight
Say
it.
we're getting a logo.
And also with, so, yeah, they said they
It'll
could,
just
they can help
magically
facilitate that.
appear.
So I'll talk to Tim, the mayor of Bloomington. So Melanie is just hearing about this. But
Surprise.
we'll try and do something, because I think it's important.
I don't think we should do anything friendly with people in Bloomington.
I don't either.
Not very nice.
Play nice. We can play nice.
Will the ribbon that we stretch across be purple?
Bright purple.
Bright purple?
So anyway, I can report back on a lot of that. And, but I don't know, we'll bring in the 35W
Yeah.
Solutions Alliance
Yeah.
on all of that. But I just wanted to share that.
Cool.
The other thing, with our MLC, I think the biggest thing, and Melanie, you can chime in on this, has to do with what's been going on with First Homes. What is the name of the
Housing
group?
First.
Huh?
Housing First?
Housing First. And you guys have read all of the articles about that. And, we have testified. Prior Lake, Lakeville, Woodbury, because they're impacted a great deal, and they're the ones that have been targeted. They haven't targeted us, but there's not much. But we've supported all of those communities, because the thing is, it isn't our fees that is causing the delay. It's the cost of land, and we've done a lot of things to really show. In one size, legislation doesn't fit all. We're all very different communities. So anyway, that's continuing to go on, and I don't know, it might come back up next legislative session. So it's still very high on our priority list. I don't think there's anything else that's on our radar for MLC right now. The legislative committee has not met. And Greg and I are on the metro cities, and we're just finishing up. Yeah. Anything that you think we should report on? It's
Not that I have.
nothing has changed. So, okay. That's all I have. Melanie?
Madam Mayor, could I
Yeah.
circle back on
Sure.
a couple things? What are you laughing at? The HOCC race had, we had 510 registered. I think we had a bunch of sponsors that registered but don't necessarily participate. But I would say, and we think it was about 80 to 100, so we had 400-ish show up that day. And
Participants.
Melanie was
Yeah.
there with her son.
I was, yeah.
You were
Pretty good.
there, of course. And obviously the weather was incredible, and it was, we had mobile command there, the ladder truck, BJ brought the ladder truck, Chief Schwartz was there, and BJ, and then a squad, and our photo backdrop had that in the background, so two backgrounds. But anyway, tremendous success. The funds that are being given to the Boys and Girls Club Kids Feeding Kids program is $60,000, which was $10,000 higher than 2019 when we had our last in-person event. And that was helped by Brad and Wayne Rixman, who went back and called some friends and pushed the number up. And those folks that they called have always been involved and supported. One time, one gentleman served on the board at the Twin Cities Boys and Girls Club. So they were more than happy to contribute. And everyone was just really happy with how the whole event came off, flowed. We had a waffle truck there, much like the fire muster. There was a long line, and the one person came in the truck, and they were overwhelmed, and they couldn't cook them fast enough. They were delicious. Those who got one, I didn't get one because I was a little busy. But so we're going to go for a second food truck, breakfast food truck there next year. And so anyway, overall, wonderful, wonderful event. We really appreciate the city being a legacy supporter. And this year, thanks to Greg, our Burnsville Community Television was there.
Yeah.
We've never actually, and I am guilty of totally forgetting, never asked to have Burnsville Community Television show up and do some B-roll and do a little segment. And they were there, and they got the start of the races and the award ceremony and the check presentations to our 9/11. Thanks again to EFH, who stepped up with $1,000. Thanks again to New Spaces, Sean, our friend
Sean.
in Bloomington, but has a business here. And Wayne Rixman and Brad Rixman, they all stepped up with $1,000 separate from the Heart of the City race. And we had a $4,000 jumbo check presentation to our public safety, police and fire. So hopefully, I'm sure they'll find a good use to put that. And then thanks to Run and Fun, who contributed a certificate to each of the winners of the race, but also first, second, and third in all three races, but also gave a $150 gift certificate to our public safety to use as they see fit. And I'm sure they're going to run into a family who has maybe hitting hard times. Hopefully no fire happens, but circumstances that they can put that to good use. So we really appreciate all those sponsors stepping up. And then last, NLC, I forgot, the National League of Cities, TIS, we're breaking out policy discussions to develop policy positions, and drone is one particular subgroup, and I am chairing a group of 5 or 6 people who are going to meet to develop some further policy guidelines in that particular area of the NLC TIS committee. So let's see. Oh, big work session coming up with the Minnesota drone delegation. I think it's planned for like 2 or 2.5 hours. And I believe it's next week. So actually looking forward to that. This is all very, very, very fun. Some of these larger meetings like TAB, when they cut out 2 or 2.5 hours right in the middle of a day, it gets to be challenging. But the subject matter is very, very interesting to me, and I'm learning a lot. And the last one is the World Economic Forum, Advanced Air Mobility Committee. We usually meet every other month, and that one is really interesting because there's folks from around the world on the Zoom call, and we get presentations from other countries with what they're doing in advanced air mobility. And so that one is probably at the top of the stack as far as what is really engaging and interesting, because you're getting perspectives and accents from around the world. Anyway, thank you. That was it. I missed a couple.
Okay, good. Melanie and Greg, anything from staff side?
Madam Mayor.
Okay. Well, with that, we stand adjourned by acclamation. Thank you, everybody. This was great. Hey, we get to go home early.